When Mou Chun returned to her master's herb garden after being away for only a single day, she was horrified to discover that the precious medicinal herbs cultivated by the Baicao family had been covered in frost. These herbs were the result of many years of effort by her late master. Seeing them frozen filled her with panic and guilt. She feared that all of her master's hard work would be ruined under her care. After calming down, Mou Chun noticed something strange. The frost only appeared around her herb garden, while the surrounding areas remained completely normal. This led her to suspect that someone had deliberately used a powerful magical technique nearby. Although she was skilled in cultivating plants, she had little experience in combat or investigation. Therefore, she asked a passing underground academy student to help search for the person responsible while she stayed behind to save the herbs. Following traces of frost, frozen flowers, and lingering magical energy, the student gradually discovered a trail of icy energy leading toward the lakeside. Eventually, the investigation led to a woman surrounded by intense cold. The woman introduced herself as Wang Zhaojun and immediately admitted that the strange freezing phenomenon had indeed been caused by her. She explained that she possessed a special power of ice. Although she could suppress it, she could never completely control it. While waiting near Herb Valley, her thoughts had wandered, causing her power to become unstable and unintentionally spread frost throughout the surrounding area. The student realized that the herbs in Mou Chun's garden had likely been damaged by this uncontrolled power. Wang Zhaojun then revealed the reason for her journey. She had traveled from the northern wilderness wolf riders to seek out the Baicao family. Her purpose was to revive a withered plum branch. She had heard that the Baicao family possessed a secret technique capable of restoring dead trees to life. Although the creator of that technique had already passed away, Mou Chun was the master's only disciple and was believed to have inherited that knowledge. Upon learning that she had accidentally damaged Mou Chun's herbs before even meeting her, Wang Zhaojun felt deeply remorseful and wished to apologize in person. The student warned her that Mou Chun was currently busy saving the damaged herbs and might be angry after learning the truth. Nevertheless, Wang Zhaojun insisted that she should take responsibility and personally offer her apology. The student eventually agreed and brought her back to the herb garden. When they arrived, Mou Chun was shocked to learn that Wang Zhaojun was the source of the frost. At first, she suspected that the story about an uncontrollable ice power was merely an excuse. However, when Wang Zhaojun offered to demonstrate her power, the surrounding air immediately became colder. Frightened, Mou Chun quickly stopped her before more frost could form. Realizing that Wang Zhaojun had been telling the truth, Mou Chun finally believed her explanation. Although she remained worried about her herbs, she asked Wang Zhaojun to stay a little farther away from the garden to avoid causing additional damage. To everyone's surprise, despite having been frozen earlier, the herbs had already begun showing signs of life again. After seeing the herbs regain some vitality, Wang Zhaojun asked whether Mou Chun had managed to revive them. Mou Chun confirmed that she had followed the methods left behind by her late master and worked extremely hard to save the herbs. However, she explained that they had only barely survived. If she wanted them to fully recover, she still needed one more ingredient. When Wang Zhaojun asked if she could help, Mou Chun revealed that she needed a rare material known as the Half-Decayed Wood. This strange wood grew in the spring pool wetlands and was characterized by being half flourishing and half rotten. According to her master's notes, Crushing it and mixing it into the soil could nourish plants and even restore them to their former vitality. Feeling responsible for the damage, Wang Zhaojun immediately offered to retrieve the half-decayed wood as an apology. Before she could leave, however, Mou Chun warned her that the wetlands were home to many woodplow beasts. Because the half-decayed wood possessed powerful life-giving properties, those creatures were unusually active and difficult to deal with. Although Wang Zhaojun possessed mysterious ice powers, Mou Chun still worried whether she could return safely. Wang Zhaojun replied that she had traveled all the way from the northern wilderness and experienced many hardships along the journey. A few woodplow beasts would not be enough to stop her. Seeing their determination, Mou Chun entrusted the task to them. She explained that the half-decayed wood was difficult to identify and promised to join them later. After finishing her work with the herbs, following the map she provided, Wang Zhaojun and the investigator traveled to the spring pool wetlands. Upon arrival, they noticed that the vegetation there was much denser than in the surrounding areas. There were also many more woodplow beasts. They suspected that the unusual growth was the effect of the half-decayed wood. As they prepared to move closer, Wang Zhaojun stopped the investigator. She thanked him for helping her meet Mou Chun and suggested that he should not risk himself any further. She worried that her ice powers could accidentally injure him if they fought side by side. Wang Zhaojun was surprised. She admitted that she had never expected to meet someone outside the northern wilderness who did not fear the cold surrounding her. Encouraged by his trust, she promised to control her powers carefully and asked him to immediately tell her if he felt uncomfortable. Together, they observed the area and eventually spotted a piece of wood wrapped in the roots of several woodplow beasts. One half of the wood was flourishing with life, while the other half was decayed. It appeared to be exactly what they were searching for. After discussing a plan, Wang Zhaojun decided to remain behind and provide support from a distance. She gathered the frost energy throughout the wetlands and used it to slow the movements of the woodplow beasts, creating an opportunity for the investigator to approach. With her assistance, the investigator successfully obtained the half-decayed wood. Examining it closely, they confirmed that it was indeed the half-decayed wood that Mou Chun needed. Wang Zhaojun felt relieved. Once the herbs recovered, Mou Chun would hopefully be able to help revive the withered plum blossom. Curious, the investigator asked why that withered plum blossom was worth such a long and difficult journey. Wang Zhaojun revealed that it was a keepsake connected to someone important from her past. Long ago, she and that person had made a promise that they would meet again one day when the cold plum blossoms bloomed. Although she had finally returned, the plum blossom had already withered. Even so, she still hoped to restore it so that it could witness their reunion and fulfill the promise that had once been made. The investigator realized how important that promise was to her. Wang Zhaojun quietly agreed. To her, it was more important than anything else. The investigator then suggested that she carry the half-decayed wood herself and personally deliver it to Mou Chun. However, Wang Zhaojun declined. She worried that her ice powers might accidentally affect the wood and ruin all of their efforts. As they waited for Mou Chun to arrive, the investigator became curious about Wang Zhaojun herself. In response, Wang Zhaojun explained that her ice powers originated from the Sea of Lingdong, the sacred land of the northern wilderness wolf riders. This power allowed her to travel the world with confidence, but it also carried the responsibility of protecting her people. She added that once the withered plum blossom bloomed again and all unfinished matters were resolved, she would return to the northern wilderness. When asked about her homeland, She described it as a land located at the northernmost edge of the continent, where severe cold persisted throughout the year. Her people had long since adapted to such conditions. She then confessed that outside the northern wilderness, the investigator was the first person who had not been afraid of the eternal cold that surrounded her. When asked how she felt about living with such power, Wang Zhaojun reflected that people who were different from others often ended up walking a lonely path. Such loneliness might simply be a fate that could not be escaped. Even so, she believed she would learn to accept it. She then admitted that it had been a very long time since she had spoken so openly about these matters with another person. When the investigator wondered whether others had never been curious about her, Wang Zhaojun replied that perhaps they had been. However, faced with the frost and snow that constantly accompanied her, most people chose to keep their distance before ever getting to know her. Soon after, Mou Chun arrived and confirmed that the half-decayed wood they found was genuine. However, it was still immature and would not be effective unless it was artificially matured. According to her master's teachings, this process required a person to pour a large amount of life energy into the wood, which was extremely dangerous. To everyone's surprise, Wang Zhaojun volunteered. Since the incident had started because of her loss of control, she felt responsible for fixing it herself. After exhausting much of her strength, Wang Zhaojun successfully matured the half-decayed wood. Although she became visibly weak, she assured the others that she only needed some rest. After exhausting much of her strength, Wang Zhaojun successfully matured the half-decayed wood. Although she became visibly weak, she assured the others that she only needed some rest. Moved by her actions, Mou Chun apologized for previously suspecting her of intentionally damaging the herbs. Wang Zhaojun understood, knowing how much Mou Chun treasured her late master's legacy. Mou Chun then returned to save the herbs and promised that, once they recovered, she would help Wang Zhaojun revive the Withered Plum Blossom. She invited Wang Zhaojun and the investigator to wait at her camp's library, where her master's notes were kept.